Conquer Your Chaos, Simple Strategies for Living Your Best Life. My name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and today we are going to talk about a topic that I'm really passionate about, which is authenticity. Today, my special guest is Hardy Brooklyn, who is a coach, entrepreneur, actor, model, performer, work-life balance expert, alternative lifestyle scene enthusiast, and video podcaster. Hardy, welcome, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me today.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right, great. So before we start talking about authenticity, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I am a transformational life coach that helps people go through change in their life, whether it's changing your lifestyle, whether it's having a baby, whether it's changing your job, moving houses, getting a promotion, um, going through a divorce, getting married. Doesn't really matter what it is. I help people go through that change in their life through a positive manner, through very targeted questions to try to find out where the root of their problems are and find out what is holding them back to allow them to move forward or to overcome the challenges that they're facing. And we always try to take it from the approach of being positive and being supportive. Um,
That's really great. Oh, sorry, were you going to say something else?
Sorry, and my background comes from I was a technology and business consultant throughout the years, and
Mhm.
I felt that being a consultant in those spaces, I was constantly putting band-aids on problems, and I was never fixing the root of the problem. So I'd go in and do a project for a corporation that would be successful by the parameters of the project, but it never solved their problem. And about a year ago, I took a step back and I started looking at what projects I was working on and decided that coaching was more of a direction that I wanted to pursue because it was more of supporting the client instead of doing what the American medical system here does. We treat the problem, not the root of the problem. And since I've been treating the root of the problem, I've had much better outcomes. And me and my clients are way better happy. I mean, we're much happier than we were. And when I move my clients into authenticity, it allows them to live their true self.
And that's a powerful space to be. And I can relate to everything you said. I've been through different transitions in my life. I've been through divorce. I'm a mom of a teenager, and I've got remarried, and we have a blended family, and I've done the career change. So all those different transitions can kick up a lot of emotions.
Yes, they can.
and and when I went through the coaching program that I went through, I was like, all right, I wanted to help others and support other people. And my goal when I went to the school was to change my careers. And it ended up just changing my life as well, because there was all these things that I was slapping band-aids on for a long time that I didn't realize. And then you start digging up all those roots, and it can be unpleasant at first when you're like pulling up all these things and you're like, ah. But once you look at those things and you deal with it, that's where amazing shifts happen in your life. And I used to be a former people pleaser, and and you when I tapped into my authenticity and I started to become fearless of being who I am and expressing myself, I felt liberated. Like I feel like a sense of freedom now that I didn't experience before, when I felt like I had to be who people wanted me to be.
I would definitely agree. And I think what I've seen when I went through my coaching classes was it was definitely a learning experience. And one of the things that I felt when I did my coaching certifications is I went through multiple schools because there are multiple points of view,
Hmm.
there are multiple opinions. And by going through three very different programs, it gave me a very different perspective, especially on the authenticity side of it. A lot of them
Hmm.
have ways that they approach it, and sometimes they just don't work. Everything doesn't work for everyone. When I'm
That is
working with my
so true.
clients, when I'm working with my clients, there are some times where I bring another coach on because I'm at a
Hmm.
block with them. So I have partners that I work with, and other coaches that are we're here to support each other, and we're here to provide the best solution for our clients or our customers. So I really feel that the clients that I've helped become authentic, and when I became authentic, I felt the functional change in my body. So I went from being someone that had constant stress, had constant tension, was constantly having arthritis flare ups. There was a lot of things that were going on in my body that were really, I felt, geared towards the fact that I was living somebody else's dream. I was living what my mom wanted me to be, what society said was a good job for me. I wasn't living authentically what I wanted to do. And as I went through the coaching programs, and some of them were not even on authenticity,
Mhm.
they were just generally on like, what are your limiting beliefs? What's holding you back? What's your blockage? And be able to take a step back, look at my authentic self, and now live my authentic self, it doesn't matter to me what people say. So if I'm getting body painted naked in Times Square, everybody's like, I can't believe you're doing that. You're naked in front of millions of people and you're getting painted. That's so childish. You know what? It feels good to me. So I don't feel like I need to respond negatively or positively to them. I just say thank you very much and move on. Where before I went through these programs, even though I said it didn't bother me, it did.
Mhm.
So that put me in a position, and then as I moved forward, more in my authentic self, I noticed that the people that were more like my authentic self started to come around me. So as I made the functional and fundamental changes of living a happier life, living a life truer to me, the people that didn't support that authentic life disappeared into some other world. They stopped calling me. They stopped following up with my emails. They stopped inviting me. And you know what? I look back on it and I said, yeah, I spent 30 years building relationships with people. And I made a change for my own authentic self that's outside of their construct of society. They turned me away. Now, is it their loss or is it my loss? I look at it as their loss. They're losing someone that's become richer, more happier, and more true to their own personality and spirit.
And you created the space for the right people to show up. And so we when we eliminate the wrong people in our lives, and it can be hard at first, there's that fear of abandonment, like, oh my god, if I lose these people who've been a part of my life for so long, I'm going to be all alone. But you're actually making space for the right people to be in your life.
Yes. And one of a couple of rules that I kind of tell people to do is like, what is authenticity? So we don't really want to give it a rigid definition, but I try to tell people that it's being true to yourself is the first thing, and then
Mhm.
maintaining strict coherence between what you feel and what you say and do. So your words have to match your body.
Mhm.
And for a lot of people, we're so used to playing a part. We're so used to telling a script because of what society's expectations are, or what we were taught in school, or because we're acting out of fear of disappointment, that we take a step back and we have to really make sure that our words match our body's feelings and that they're not in contradiction. Because once they go into contradiction, we're not authentic. And we
Right.
want to make value choices.
Right, and that doesn't feel good.
Right. So we also want to make value choices. We want to choose to do things based on what our authentic belief is, not what society says, not what your English teacher said, or not what TV demonstrates. And a good way to take that and take a step back is even in the COVID times, we're constantly talking about boundaries. and people getting too close to you, and all these rules of the world are changing. Are we making our decisions about what boundaries during COVID are based on science, fact, and our own feelings, or are we making them based on what somebody else says? And as we work into more and more boundaries because we're stuck in the same household with people, we're interacting with people in a different way when we leave the house. We're doing all of these different things, but how do we make sure that we maintain our authentic self through that? And the way that we do that is by making statements, by making decisions, by taking actions that are based on what your value system is and what you believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big key, sometimes we don't even realize, like back when I was doing learning coaching, I never really thought about my values. And the clients that I've worked with, once you have them start thinking about their values, it's like I've realized most people never even thought about these things before. And once you get clear on what your values are and what's important to you, you start realizing why there's discontent in your life. Because are you working a job that doesn't align with your values? Are you spending time with people that don't align with your values? And and that's a very important recipe in in connecting to that authentic piece of yourself, is getting clear on what your values are in the first place.
When we look at where we are and where we want to be, I think it's very important that we do deep inner discovery. I also did the same thing when I went through my coaching process. It made me really think about values, but it made me think about them in a different way. It made me think about them in a way that I would connect to my body. So when I would say something, we might have, I might say a statement that ultimately is what society is expecting. It's what I've learned because it's what's on TV, it's what's in the media, but it definitely contradicts my core value system. And I circle around that and I try to think about, how do I replace those words? How do I replace that language so that people are going to accept me and that people are going to understand what I'm trying to communicate to them? And that's a process that takes time and it takes asking yourself a lot of questions and it takes a lot of meditation, in my opinion.
Yes. Definitely a lot of meditation, because it allows you to take that pause and that inner look, and quiet the noise around you to really take a look inside. I heard one analogy I heard about meditation a while back, and I share this with clients, is it's kind of like a snow globe. Like our brains are like a snow globe that's all shaken up, and then you set the snow globe down and it's still for a moment, all the snow settles down to the bottom and all of a sudden it's clear. And that's like what our mind is. We have all these like thoughts and things flying around in our minds, and we don't even pay attention to it half the time. And when we have that moment to pause and be still, we start to take notice of the things we've been ignoring for a long time.
We do. And we also will ignore a lot of things about our body.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is when I'm coaching someone, the body tells a lot of stories and how the body feels and how the body looks. I mean, I've had clients that have had their skin situations clear up. I was working with a gentleman and very stressed about his job, very just stressed about life. And when we actually got down to what the root of the problems were and figured out where it was coming from and then addressed it and let him came up with with affirmations to work around it and meditation and positive reinforcement, he was just like, wow, it went away. And it was because his body was holding so much negative energy. That's how they were releasing it, was releasing it.
I can relate to that also. I've had like skin issues also when I was going through stressful periods of time. And also having sensitivities to foods that I would normally be able to eat, and it was impacting my intestines and my skin and just everything when you have all this like pent up stress.
Yep.
So yeah, and so my experience with authenticity is, my definition for it is just being who you are naturally, which is just another way of saying what you had said. And when I know that I'm being authentic to myself, it's forced versus flow. So when something feels forced for me and it doesn't feel natural, then I know it's not something that's authentic for me. When something flows for me, even if it's something challenging, like doing YouTube and doing things in my coaching business can be scary because I'm challenging myself, I'm doing things out of my comfort zone. But when I do it in a way that feels authentic to me, it's like I don't mind doing it because it's something I want to do naturally, and things flow for me because I'm being my natural self versus trying to force myself to be a certain way.
I would definitely totally agree with that. The one caveat is I think that people have to think about authenticity when how does it also make them feel deep down? Because a lot of times I find people, and I was guilty of this, is that what I thought was authentic was just a comfortable pattern that I had learned from childhood.
Ah, that's a very good point as well.
So
Yeah.
it was a negative, comfortable pattern that I had learned from childhood that I had to take a step back from. And I had to really think about it because it felt authentic, except it flowed. It was easy to do. It was so comfortable, but it really wasn't. And to
That's
figure out that and find that during meditation, that's where you get it, is when you clear the mind and working
absolutely
with somebody to help you.
right. Coaching is a powerful, powerful way of just working with yourself. And coaches need coaches. I work with coaches for myself because we all have our blind spots. We're all stuck in our heads. And when you have that person outside of you asking you those powerful questions in a safe environment where it's neutral, and it helps a lot having someone who's not a part of your life, like if you ask your friend for advice, or and coaching is not advice, it's just helping you learn how to solve your own problems, and the coach gives you the tools and asks the right questions to help you to be able to do that.
And unfortunately, there are times where the coach does have to give some advice or give
Right.
perspective. So I just want to let people know that if your coach is giving advice or giving you perspective, it's really nice if they point that out before they start going down that rabbit hole. I always do that. Whenever I switch out of coaching mode into consultant or mentor mode, I make sure to alert the client to that because they
So
need
I
to
do that
accept they
too.
need accept the information differently. Well, there are a lot of coaches I have that don't, that I've met.
I've had some experience with some coaches who've done that with me. But yeah, with my clients, I ask permission. Like I'll say, "Hey, I have can I share an insight with you, or would it be
Right.
okay if I shared something with you that has worked with me in the past or has worked with a client?" So I always ask permission. This way they have that choice, and this way it's not unsolicited advice.
Yeah, and that's really smart, is that when you're working with a coach, you need to make sure that the way the coach is coming across to you is the way that you want them to interact with you, that we're not giving them unsolicited advice, that we're not taking them down a path or a direction that they're really not comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a key to knowing that you're working with a good coach is when you don't feel like a coach is trying to force a specific agenda on you and what they think you should be doing. It's and I've had some experiences with coaches like that, and it's just knowing if you feel like they're trying to force something like an agenda and telling you what to do, then that's a moment to step back and decide where you want to pursue things with that particular coach.
Yes. So I want to just try to center it back around to authenticity. Because
Yes.
one of the things that I realized is that when I went through the process, getting the information just from the coaching program that had that had the section on authenticity was helped me a certain amount.
Right.
The other thing that I thought was really good was that I did a bunch of research for myself. I didn't ask somebody to provide it to me. I didn't go to the best links, and there were plenty of places out there that I could have gone to get this information. I started searching the web and different sites, but I also spoke the sites that I was searching were business sites,
Hmm.
psychological sites. So I was going to sites that had accreditations, that had actual case studies, that had actual data to back up the theories behind it. So, like Psychology Today is a great source. Harvard Business Review is a great source. So I went to these places and then I read everything they had to say. And I then watched a lot of YouTube videos and I read a couple of books. And I then took back to my Dale Carnegie, my Sandler Sales days, all of the different self improvement programs that I've taken over time. I was able to take all of those things together and then understand fundamentally what I wanted to do in being authentic and what I've been able to work with my clients to ask those questions because I felt that if I would have just done the coaching program, I would have become authentic. I would have known what authentic was and I would have been able to coach people through it. But after looking at the authenticity from a business state, from a best practices, whether it's from, you know, Johns Hopkins School of Public Health on how longer you live when you're your authentic self. So there's a lot of data out there that to back it up. Because I'm a data driven person, I went and
Hmm.
acquired the data. I always had to validate every source though, because some of the data that I found out there was junk. It was the complete opposite of what we're saying, that you should be a team player, that you should be a people pleaser. And
Wow.
I take a step back, and a lot of people are probably not going to like the next statement that I make. When people want to be their authentic self, they need to change from being religious to being, oh, the word just escaped me, spiritual, to being philosophy, because religion prevents you from being your authentic self because it tells you how to live.
I can agree to that wholeheartedly because growing up in a, and I don't haven't really talked about this on video before, but I grew up in a religious Jewish household, and just some of it resonated with me and not all of it, then other parts didn't. And I didn't like the rigid, you have to do it a specific way. And I believe in God, and there's traditional aspects to the religion that I like, but I'm more of a spiritual person. And I used to feel so conflicted in the beginning because there was where I was drawn to, but then feeling the guilt of, but this was not how I was raised. So you go through this, I think, guilt and shame period when you're going through this process of, this is how I was told to be growing up. And this is where I'm interested in going, and trying to figure out that right balance for you. And once I reached that space within myself with just research and different things, I realized what was right for me. And I found the right balance for me. And once I got connected to myself and what that balance was, and I got clear on it, then it got easier for me to set my boundaries and conduct myself and just, practice things the way that felt right for me.
And that's what makes it really hard for people to go through change in life and to live their authentic self because we're constantly having the opposite reinforced, whether it's how we were grown up, how we were raised, what the church says, or what the government says, because the government and other people around us don't want us to live our authentic self because then they're not going to get the best out of us in their opinion.
Right.
So when I'm working with my clients, I really try to work with them to figure out what's preventing it and then how do we move forward. And so a lot of times for people, living their authentic self might mean they have to turn off the TV because the person that they're trying to live is being reinforced and reshown on TV or the expectation of where they want to go. They're not choosing where they want to go on their own. And a lot of people don't like breaking the rules. A lot of people like being super kind to their fellow man. A lot of people don't, most people don't care if left to their own will, race, color, creed, religion. Most people wouldn't care if they weren't told something was bad about it. So people would be respectful to more people, except we're constantly having these negative reinforcements from the outside world telling us how our authentic life should be, who we should be with, who we should talk to, and all of these things that we should do. So I tell people that when we're trying to go through this process, be passionate with yourself. Change is hard. And
Hmm.
being authentic is even harder because you might get there and then change your mind because you've now had a whole journey and you've learned all this new stuff about yourself and about the world, and your perception has changed.
Yeah.
So I literally had a client that I walked through, oh, I'm living my authentic life, I'm great. And then, all right, we're done with the program. Perfect. Usually, hear back from him in about a month, check in, how's everything going? 2 weeks later, I get a phone call. I want to sign up again.
Hmm.
I'm like, wait a second, we just finished. Did I screw up? He's like, no, I was like over the weekend, I was pondering everything, and I kind of think that I'm only halfway there.
Hmm.
And he went so much further. He went so much deeper into being who he truly wants to be that it allowed him to be happier and now understand where a lot of those actions and thoughts were coming from.
Yeah, and it's so important. Sometimes you have to, it's like doing the cha-cha. Like you take a few steps forward and then you have to take a few steps back and you take a few steps forward. And I've certainly gone through that with myself and my journey and the journey that I have had with clients. And you think you had something all figured out with yourself, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh wait.
Yep.
And then you have to backtrack a little bit, and it's, I think the best thing to do is just embrace that process and understand that it's going to be messy, because yeah, change is hard, transformation is hard, transition is hard. Once you get to the other side of it, things start to get easier. And I just wanted to circle back briefly to religion. Is if someone practices religion, that's great. It's, I think the main thing is people just need to do what's right for them. And if it's following religion, great. But if other people want to do spirituality, I guess what I'm trying to say is everyone just needs to do them. So whatever that is,
Yes.
whether you're a whether you want to just be a spiritual person and not follow a specific structure, or you do. And I think that's where a lot of the conflict happens, is everyone's trying to impose what they think other people should be doing. And it's okay to live your lifestyle. And if someone else has a different lifestyle from you, that's okay also. And I think the world would be a better place if everyone just let everyone just do their thing.
And that's what, as you become more authentic in yourself, you become comfortable with that. You become comfortable with the people that you're with, whether it's church or temple or the mosque, it doesn't matter where they are. People
Yeah,
judging you or not judging you, that becomes transparent to you. You don't care anymore. So, oh,
right.
that person didn't do Easter Sunday. That person doesn't celebrate the Sabbath. That person doesn't wear black shoes. Whatever it might be that organization or that constraint is that you're not following,
Yeah.
it becomes okay for you to pick and choose. And if those people in that situation don't want to allow you to change for yourself, it tells me that you need to look for different people to surround yourself by people that are better supporting your authentic self.
Absolutely. This has been a really great conversation, and we're going to have to wrap it up soon. But before we end, I just wanted to, what are some tips that you would like to share with viewers on how to respond to others who do not support your decisions off, your authentic self? what you know how do you what would you recommend for people who are not being supported for their decisions, for being authentic?
So the thing that I tell a lot of my clients, and one of the things that I've done is I had a realistic perception of what reality is going to look like
Mm,
after my first interaction. So I went from my previous persona that people saw was somebody that was fairly conservative in his outward appearance. So I was the suit and tie guy with shoes, and I dressed the part. I dressed the part. When I went to a Grateful Dead concert, I looked like a Grateful Dead guy. When I went to a Broadway show, I looked like a Broadway show. When I went to a board meeting, I had the tux. I was definitely dressing the part, playing the part, and taking jobs and projects based on what everybody said. And then when I started making the switch, I was like, oh, everybody's going to support me. This is going to be great. But I had to take a step back and set a realistic perception of what reality is going to be and how they're going to respond. Once I set that and understood that, I was then able to allow people to accept myself for who I am and other people for who they am. Everybody's not going to be this dream. Everybody is a person and they're going to be
mhm,
that. You can want them to be something else. You can hope they'll be something else. You can desire, but the chances are they're having their limitations. And you just have to figure out how to accept that from them. Are you thoughtful? Are you thinking about what you're doing and how you're getting to the process and the decisions you're making? Do you have a sense of humor that's non hostile? Because people that are not living their authentic self typically have a hostile sense of humor.
mm,
So when we're making jokes, are we making the joke to enlighten or are we making the joke to hurt? So we want to think about having a more positive sense of humor because then it's really about living your authentic self. And have you become being able to express your emotions? So learn how to cry for men. Learn how to express emotion. Learn how to
mhm,
hug. Learn how to frown. And make sure that you're clearly communicating that emotion. I don't feel good today. Tell your partner what they're doing that's making you not feel good. Am I open to learning from my mistakes? Inauthentic people don't learn from their mistakes. They have a set of rules, and that's what
mm,
they do. And do I understand the motivation behind what I'm doing? And no longer am I trying to understand other people's motivation because I don't know. I don't know what's in their head. I don't know how many times they're cheated on high school tests. I don't know how many times their mom beat them. I don't know how many times they got arrested. I don't know how many times they won the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know all this information about the people I'm interacting with.
right.
So I really need to not worry about figuring out what their motivation is or making a judgment on it. So I think those are some of the things. And then constantly research, work with a coach, work with your therapist, work with everybody you possibly can to be your true self. And remember, this is a journey. And throughout this journey, we're going to have to re-navigate. We're going to have to change the way that we go because we're going to learn more about ourselves and more about the world than we ever wanted to or thought we wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, like setting, like you were saying, in another way of saying is setting those reasonable expectations on yourself and the people around you, and feeling your feelings. Very important, because when you ignore your feelings, it's like sweeping dirt under the rug. It's still going to be there, and eventually you're going to run out of space, and it's all going to come out in other ways in your life.
Yep.
So feeling those feelings, expressing yourself, and support is so important. And with the internet, there's so many ways you can connect with people who are into the same types of things that you're into, whatever your interests are. There's meetup.com. There's also, and yes, it's important to have a therapist or a coach to help you when you're going through big life changes, or to help you heal from things from the past. And but yeah, finding that support, those are all very important things that are part of that process. Are there any resources, books, podcasts, that you would recommend?
Yeah, we'll put them in the show notes, but one of the ones that I really like, I think it's called Relationship Alive.
Okay.
That's that's probably one of the better ones that I recommend people starting to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one. I have a list. Hold on. If I find
Yeah,
it
and we'll
quick.
definitely put any resources that you want me to share with everyone. I'll also put them.
Yeah, so Relationship Alive is a good one. Another one I like to work with, especially if it's marriage, is the Gotham Institute.
Yes, I've heard
GOTTMAN
of that.
Institute. Most of the other stuff that I listen to is more just around change.
Hmm.
So I listen to things like How to Fail by Elizabeth Day, the Change Academy. I mean, I just listen to a bunch of podcasts around change because ultimately that's going to help you find your authentic self, is being acceptable, accepting change and embracing change. Because to be your authentic self, there's going to be a lot of change for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to add the Brene Brown Unlocking Us podcast. I don't know if you've listened to that. Brene Brown is an expert on vulnerability and being vulnerable. And I recently started listening to this podcast, and it takes the whole authenticity to a whole other level. She really gives some great insights on all of that. So I'm going to put that in the show notes as well as a great thing to check out.
So it's Brene Brown.
Brene Brown, Brene Brown.
Got it.
Yeah, she's got books. She has a famous TED Talk on vulnerability. She's done studies on shame, and she also has an amazing Netflix special that came out last year. Um, yeah, she's really great to check out on that as well.
Perfect. I will definitely look at that. I'm always looking to get more information.
Great. Well, Hardy, it was really great chatting with you about authenticity. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, I mean, people can check me out if they want. If I can give a little self pitch, I have a podcast called The Free and Open Mind. That's on YouTube that you can check out where we talk about living your authentic self. I do that with a very interesting co-host. And if you want to check me out, you can find me at boxofrain.com, BOXOFRAIN.com. That's my business site. And if you want to find me myself, I'm at Hardy Brooklyn, HARDY, Brooklyn, like the borough.com.
Great. And I will put all of those links as well so people can find that easily. All right. Well, thank you so much for stopping by and having this chat with me. And thank you all who have tuned in and watched.
Thank you. Enjoy.
All right.